Your name is Frank Accito, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And whereabouts do you live, Frank?
I live at 921 Jesse Avenue on the Malik track.
In Yuba City.
Yes, sir.
And, Frank, where were you on December 23rd, we'll say that afternoon?
Well, we were over at the river, Ed Wilson and I, about between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. And we were watching the river there, and Ed says to me, he says, what do you think of the river? I says, gee, Ed, I says, boy, I says, that's pretty high in it. I says, about 2 feet higher than I ever saw it. And I said, I've been here since 27. He says, yeah. He says, I think she's going to break someplace. I says, well, I'm for sure that it is. So, but I didn't think that it would break where it did.
Well, where did you think it would break, Frank?
Well, in my opinion, I thought that probably the mathematicians of Marysville and Yuba City had figured it out, and they had it all evacuated south of Marysville, and it wouldn't have been too much loss over there because they had the people all out, and there wasn't too good a farming land there, and I thought maybe they had it figured out to break it there, which wasn't a good thing to do, but then that's what I had figured that they were going to do. But I knew that the river couldn't hold, the banks couldn't hold that river.
Frank, why did you think that? Had they done that in the past?
Well, I've heard of things like that, and I never actually saw it done, no, but I heard of it.
Well, we'd heard several comments about chopping crews, and we had several phone calls relative to that particular area. Of course, during the course of the evening, wondering if we had any reports of any chopping crews being sent out. Of course, the people who had evacuated were very much interested to find out if their homes were going to be inundated by busting the levee. Well, then, what, in your estimation, then you didn't really believe that it was going to be very safe, but you decided to stay with your family there in the Malik track, Frank?
Well, I thought it to my knowledge. I figured that we were on a high contour there, which I still think that we're about a foot higher than 2nd Street, but I never figured it was going to bust where it did.
So you got the full brunt there, actually, where it was backup water, I believe, in the over towards 2nd Street. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah, in 2nd Street, I think it was just backup water, but we got both barrels. We had the full force right there.
Well, Frank, what then did you do later on in the evening of the December 23rd?
Well, I had the radio on all night, and heard a bulletin say that they wanted somebody at the levees, and people working at the levees. So I told my wife, I said, well, let's go down. I wasn't feeling too good. I had quite a cold, and so I said, let's go down there, and I said, we'll see if there's urgent need. I said, well, I'll still work down on the levee. So my wife says, no, you better not. She says, you don't feel too good. I said, well, I says, it might help some. I says, so we went down there. And when I got down over Johnny's Quick Lunch, why, there was plenty of sufficient men. There was 200-300 men, and I thought, well, no use of me staying down here. One more man or more or less won't help too much. So I told my wife, let's go on home. Then she says we still were listening to the radio, about 9:30, 10 o'clock when we generally go to sleep. She says, what do you think? Oh, I says, I don't think it's going to bust here. I says, if it does, I says, we won't get over a foot of water. I says, we're on a pretty high contour here. And she says, are you sure? I says, sure, I'm sure. I says, I know this country pretty well, which I had figured that if it bust north of where we lived, the Gilshire Slough would handle practically all the water that had come out. But that is plenty far north. But if it break right there in Yuba City, I figured, well, we might get a foot or 2 foot of water, but I never thought we'd get 5.
You got 5 feet of water in your home?
Well, 5 foot on the outside. We got about 3 foot in the inside.
Well, and did you go to bed about that time then, Frank?
Well, I never went to bed. My wife went to bed about 10, I guess, and I went to bed about 11. And when the last bulletin I heard that Yuba City was safe and high and dry, so I said, well, maybe they know what they're doing. So I went to bed. And I got up about 5 minutes to 1. I have ulcers, and they were bothering me. That's a good thing, I guess. And they started annoying me, and I woke up 5 minutes to 1, and I turned on the radio. As I turned on the radio, first thing that I heard was anybody with a bulldozer hurry down south of Yuba City dump. We have a small leak there, and 50 men urgently needed. And hurry. So I says, geez, I says, this is getting kind of serious, and I never had no clothes on yet. So I went in the bedroom and put on my socks, pants, and shirt. And my intention were to go down towards the gum tree. I figured that maybe it might be around in that locality there that might be a little weak that I thought afterwards of that Shanghai Bend. I said, it might be over in that vicinity. That was my intentions to go out, which I'm lucky I never. So when I got back to the kitchen, though, the bulletin come back and it says, anybody going down there with the bulldozer, please turn back because the water's coming across the highway by the Gumtree service station. So I was, hot chihuahua, boy, it sure is coming, then I must be coming. I opened up the door, and we have a peach orchard to the left of us, to the east of us, and that's all I could hear is roaring through there like something wanted to get through that orchard but couldn't. So I said, that must be water. So I went and woke my wife up. That must have been about 12 after. So by the time I got my wife woke up and got her to the back door, it must have been about 15 after. And I opened up the door, and the water was right there. So then the next bulletin we hear on the radio, that was when after the water was, I'd say a foot deep in the house. Bulletin come and says, anybody living south of Lincoln Road to evacuate. And I was wondering what the hell. I says, we got water already. Why evacuate now? So my wife says, let's get out of here. I says, we can't even start the cars or truck or anything. I says, it's coming too fast. And so she said, what are we going to do? I says, I don't know. In the meantime, though, we were waking up the kids.
How many children do you have, Frank?
5. And we got them up, but they were starting to dress, and I says, well, you haven't got time to dress. I says, come on, let's get going. But I thought, too, I says, another thought come in my mind. I have a big fireplace, and the mantle is up, the hearth is up about a foot, and I thought, well, we might not get this high. And I stood on there for a second or two, and my little girl and I, Chi-Chi, we stood there, and all of a sudden a gush of water just broke up, and as I was standing there, too, the lights are on, and across the street lives Billy Rice, and there was a car parked there, and the next gush comes in there of water on the road, picks this car up, and starts putting it on a guy wire, and I says, boy, this is a lot of water. I said, we got to get out of here. But I didn't know what to do. So I thought, well, gee, I says, wait a minute. I thought of a loft in my garage. So I says, let's go out there. And I start putting the family through there. And when we got out there in the garage, well, I was in water up to my chest. It was about a little over 4 feet then.
Were you packing the children, or how did you get them out there?
We were packing them. I had one, and my oldest girl had another one. And my wife had the baby. So I got up on top of the car and started throwing them up on the loft. And then I made myself as a human ladder to get my other kids up. They crawled up on my back. And how I got up there myself, I don't know, because I never could make it before.
I think everybody found they could do lots of things they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
And is that where you
well, we perched there.
There?
Yeah, and my wife kept asking me, well, what do you think? Are we safe here? I said, oh, sure, we're safe. I says, this is just like the Rock of Gibraltar. She says, but look at that water. It's coming up. I said, no, I can't get any higher than this. But I was still scared. I still kept seeing it on the car. I was over the hood, but it kept rising. And I thought to myself, I says, geez, I said, now I wonder if I could be wrong again. I said, this thing might go up to 10 feet. I says, it can't, though, to myself, trying to make myself think. But she kept coming up, and boy, I was really scared. I didn't know what to do then. I says, Jesus, but I didn't want to let my wife and my family know. And they were getting, my oldest girl, she was getting kind of panicky. And I had to slap her. I thought maybe she might jump in the water. Then, as we were standing there, why, the garage door give. The garage steel door just buckled and bent right back. So I says, hot chihuahua, she sure is coming fast here. I says, holy mackerels, I says. And then I was scared. I didn't know if the house was going to stay there or not. But it did. It stood there on its rockers. It didn't move. And about the helicopters come in there pretty fast, about 3 o'clock.
That morning?
Yeah, that morning. See, I had a Coleman lantern, and I had that Coleman lantern up there, not for anything of that sort, but I thought maybe the power, a couple of nights before, it went off, so I thought, well, I might have that Coleman lantern, and we'll have light here for a while anyways. And lucky I did, and so I lit that there, and we had light there, and I imagine them helicopters, which a lot of people never had no lights, but I guess we were one of the first one. They could see the light through the garage, and they dropped their basket, and they flashed their light, and outside there I could see the water between, I have a shop right alongside of my garage. I could see the water there really going. I says, holy mackerels, I says, that thing is just worse than the river, I says. But I wouldn't tell my wife that. I says, I wondered now, I says, if this house and garage is safe. I says, and that's a lot of current out there. But I just kept hoping and praying it would be. But we couldn't make it out of with the helicopter when he tried to get us out the first there, because I had no way of going through there. And my wife says, well, why don't you punch a hole through the roof? And I says, well, what am I going to punch a hole through the roof for? With. And she says, well, haven't you got nothing? She says, well, all the saws you got? And I got about 10 or 15 hand saws and about 7 or 8 skill saws, electric saws out in the garage, but I never had nothing with me. Then I thought of a .22 gun that I had on top of a shelf there. I said, if I can get that, a rifle, I said, I can punch a hole through that with that. I tried, and I got the shingles up all right, but the one before was awful hard, and I couldn't punch it through. Then I says, geez, I wish I wouldn't have nailed this roof so hard. But then I had to chew it off with the sights of the gun. And I finally made it. It took me about a half an hour, and that's the way we got our family out.
Oh, you got up on top of the garage roof, and then they evacuated you by helicopter.
Yeah.
Oh, Frank, where did they take you by helicopter? Where would you...
Well, you see, that's another thing. When we got out there, my wife was out, and my oldest daughter, and Chi-Chi, and Diane, and the baby. And I was still inside there, handing them clothes, my jackets. That's all I had is jackets. That's all we had that they got out with. They never had no clothes at all. But lucky it was when we were going through the hallway there, I kept a bunch of my jackets, and I kept handing my jackets and milk. I got some milk out of the refrigerator. And I told them, you're going to need this there. And she was trying to grab the basket, but she couldn't. I thought she was scared, but she says that the wind was so great there that she couldn't grab the basket. So I got out there, and she still seemed like she was scared, so I started pulling them by the hair and pulled them in there into the helicopter, and they went up. And there was Don Greedley and his wife in there already, so they only could take my wife and 4 of my children, so my boy and I, we were left behind. They took her at the airport there, at Alicia Airport. And about a half an hour, no, it was about 15 minutes later, I imagine, they come back after us. And they took us to the Alicia Airport. And from there, we got split up, though. And we went, my wife, they says that she went to Camp Beale, and they took us to Alice School there. My boy and I, and we stood there till about 4:30 in the afternoon. And them people out there are sure nice. The poorer I think the people are, and the more hospitality they show to you. Them people out there, their own grub, they brought us out. There was about 100 of us, 100 to 150. I don't know exact count, but they brought us eggs and in the morning, ham and coffee. And about every 2 hours, they'd bring us fruit cake and coffee or some other kind of cake or pie. And all insisted that we take it. And they really showed nice hospitality out there, them people.
Frank, that, of course, was quite an ordeal. And you've given us one of the finest word pictures of any of the experiences we've had so far. Let me ask you your opinion relative, once again, to the safety of Yuba City. And of course, while they were getting the bulletins over the radio station, just prior to our interview, I think you had something relative to say about the evacuation of Yuba City.
Yes, I do. I think if we had some politicians over there that know what they're doing, that thing wouldn't have happened, or at least we could have got out of there, because any 10-year-old kid could figure out better than they did that river was going to bust, but where they didn't know, and why take the chance. That's what I can't figure out. Marysville over here, they got people in here with brains, but over there across the river, I don't think there's anybody there with brains that's in the politician bracket there. They shouldn't get themselves a 10-year-old kid to do their figuring for them, because he can figure better. Because that river at 12 o'clock, there was 2 feet higher, and I never saw it in there, and that was plenty high, and there was only about 3 foot of levee left then, and she was raising them over 6 inches an hour, the estimation that they were giving us. And they knew that there was a 4-foot crest coming, but after that crest did come, it still didn't stop. It kept coming, and they knew that. And I think Earl Blackburn, that our undersheriff, that lost his life, he wanted to evacuate the town, but they wouldn't let him.
Well, Frank, we had an interview with a gentleman just a few days ago who was down in that particular location. That was Charlie Hoagie, and he had a chance to talk to Earl. And I believe there was another deputy sheriff there at that time at the Gumtree. They were trying to get everybody out. And Charlie said at that time he didn't really believe that they knew that the levee had broken. In other words, there had been a report, but they had not been confirmed. And he was probably one of the last individuals, among the last, to have talked to Earl. Well, Frank, we want to thank you very much for taking your time to come up here and give us this report. And is there anything that you'd like to say before we move on to our program?
Well, not exactly anymore. I think they should change the politicians over there in Yuba City from the bottom up. I don't think that they know what they're doing, to my opinion.
All right, thank you very much, Frank Accito of Yuba City, for once again bringing us a report by tape recording.